Yeah, a very good morning, friends. So, welcome to the first class of GST last minute revision batch, day one, session one. So, 9 to 11, we have the session one, in which we are going to cover first two chapters, GST and introduction in India, and then supply under GST. And second session, starting from 11:30, ending with 1 o'clock, 11:30 to 1, where we are going to cover the third chapter. And tomorrow we will have 3.5 hours session. Day after tomorrow, 3.5 hours session. So tomorrow, three chapters. Chapter number 4, 5, 6, exemptions, time and value of supply, input tax credit. And day after tomorrow, three more chapters. So this is how we are going to cover the GST LMR sessions. And for income tax, today we will have the last session of income tax. We are almost at the end. We have already done in the last class up to chapter 6A reductions. We are discussing about the chapter 6A reductions. And once we complete that, then we will discuss the remaining topics like return of income, advanced tax and interest, TDS and TCS. So this is today's program. And I've already shared you the materials of the GST first five chapters. First five chapters materials already shared in the group. Hope you download it and get ready with the material right now. So without wasting of much time, so let us start with. So part 4 taxation, paper 4 in the CA Inter group 1 paper 4 taxation. Part A consisting of income tax 60 marks and part B GST 40 marks. In GST totally we are going to have 10 chapters, but among these the most important chapters, if you ask me, it is the time and value of supply. Two questions guarantee mark, because here you have two chapters in this single chapter, that is time of supply and value of supply. From time of supply definitely you will get a question, and from value of supply definitely you will get a question. So two questions compulsory for 10 marks. Then second important chapter, input tax credit, then registration under GST, and then supply under GST. I will share you these notes, don't worry. So like this, we have 10 chapters, and without wasting of much time, let us start with GST and introduction. GST in India and introduction. And first, the basic topics you have like features of the indirect taxes, various types of taxes, and then this is very important, concept of GST and need for GST. GST is a value added tax. Goods and services tax is a value added tax. See, actually, sir, we have this kind of value added taxation system in India even before the introduction of GST. At the central level, we used to have a concept called CENVAT, Central Value Added Tax. And at state level, we have state VAT, State Value Added Tax. We have this concept way before the introduction of GST only. But the thing is, non-integration of state taxes with central taxes. Non-integration of state taxes with central taxes. That's the main problem actually. The implementation of central taxes and state taxes remains piecemeal and fragmented. There is no integration between the central taxes and state taxes. And that is one of the main reasons behind the introduction of GST. So throughout the India, we should have a common taxation system, one nation, one tax. So we should have a consolidated and integrated taxation system when it comes to the goods and services. That's the main reason and idea behind the introduction of GST into India. So it's a value-added tax levied on manufacturing, sale, consumption, and goods and services. Consumption of goods and services. And you just look at the history before the GST. As I said, we used to have the SENVAT, right? At the central level, we used to have a VAT taxation system called SENVAT, and this was introduced in the year 1986. And at the state level, we have the state VAT introduced in the year 2005. So before the GST, indirect taxes, what kind of indirect taxes prevailed in India? So when it comes to the goods, if you're engaged in the manufacturing, you are supposed to pay the central excise duty. Central excise duty, which is known as SENVAT. Central excise duty and SENVAT both are one and the same. And on very few products, state governments have the power to levy the excise duty. What are they? Alcoholic liquor meant for human consumption, opium and Indian hemp, narcotics and narcotic drugs. Narcotics and narcotic drugs. On these three products, state governments reserved their rights to levy the state excise duty. Except from these three products, remaining on all the products, central government reserved its rights to levy the excise duty. And now, when it comes to the buying, if you're buying from the same state, you're supposed to pay the VAT, value added tax. Okay. Are you able to see the notes, everyone, all the students? So, whenever you're buying the goods from the same state, you're supposed to pay the VAT, value added tax. This is what we call intrastate transactions. On intrastate sales and purchases, VAT is leviable. And when you're buying from other state, interstate transactions, CST is leviable. So what is CST? Central Sales Tax. CST stands for Central Sales Tax. Next, when you are importing from other countries, then you have to pay what? You have to pay the customs duty. And when it comes to the services, service tax is leviable by the central government. These are the various indirect taxes which were prevailed before the introduction of GST. What were prevailed? Central excise duty, state excise duty, VAT, CST, customs duty, service tax. So various taxes is supposed to be levied at the different occasions in different persons' hands, at the different places, different situations. Multiple of taxes leads to unnecessary ambiguity, and unfortunately no integration between central taxes with state taxes, which leads to the cascading effect of taxes. One of the main reasons for the introduction of GST. Right, now let us see you. Next one. So concept of VAT. Why this concept of VAT was introduced? Nothing but GST. So basically, when we are introducing a new taxation system into India, in the place of existing taxation systems, reason should be what? There is some drawbacks in existing taxation systems. There is some lacunae, loopholes, drawbacks. In order to overcome the drawbacks, we are coming up with a new taxation system. That's the reason for a replacement taxation system. GST is not a new taxation system. I can call it as a replacement taxation system. It has replaced the existing indirect taxes. Why the replacement? Because under the existing taxation systems, indirect taxation system, there are some drawbacks. What are the drawbacks? And look at this. This is actually the system before the VAT introduced into India. So this is the sales tax system when it is in existence. When sales tax system in existence, right? Ante, I can say this is the situation before 2005. In 2005, we have this concept of VAT at the state level. At central level, in 1986 only they have introduced. At state level, 2005 they have introduced. If you understand this example, right, you can easily understand the reason behind the introduction of GST. First, try to understand this example. So this is an example. This is a situation prevails before 2005 when sales tax system in existence. Now, example chudima, manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, consumer. Generally, this is what we call trade cycle. This is what we call trade cycle. So manufacturer manufactures the goods, then he will sell to the wholesaler. Wholesaler sells the same to retailer. Retailer sells the same to consumer. Clear now? Now, assuming that raw material, Mr. Manufacturer purchased the raw material 60 rupees and at his stage the value addition 40 rupees, and for converting the raw materials into finished goods, whatever the expenses incurred for the conversion of raw materials into finished goods, and which also includes his margin, total put together 40 rupees. Total cost and margin comes down to 100 rupees. Now manufacturer selling the same to wholesaler. Now manufacturer and wholesaler engaging in the sales transaction now. So manufacturer being the seller, he has to levy the sales tax, and he has to collect the sales tax from wholesaler. Sales tax at the rate of 10% he levied 10 rupees. The invoice value 110 rupees. Invoice value 110 rupees. That means wholesaler should pay 110 rupees. Wholesaler should pay 110 rupees to the manufacturer. For buying these goods from manufacturer. Now wholesaler in his books of accounts, he will record the cost of the purchases, cost of goods purchased from manufacturer at 110 rupees. Now this 110 rupees is inclusive of sales tax of 10 rupees. Next, value addition 50 rupees. And at his stage, value addition at the wholesaler stage. So what is the value addition at the wholesaler stage? Already their goods are manufactured now. The major value addition happened at the manufacturer stage only. What will be the value addition at the wholesaler stage? At the wholesaler stage, the value addition is said to be, transportation charges, transit insurance, loading and unloading, packing and repacking, profit, maintenance. Yes or no? All these are the value addition at the wholesaler stage. Now, the total cost becomes to 160, including the margin of the wholesaler. Now, wholesaler selling the goods to retailer. Now, that means wholesaler has to levy the sales tax. So, 160 into 10%, 16 rupees. 176 is the invoice value. Now, the retailer has to pay 176 rupees to wholesaler for the purchase of the goods. Now, retailer shows in his books of accounts the cost of goods purchased 176 rupees, and at the retailer stage again the value addition, that loading and unloading, packing and repacking, transportation, transit insurance, his margin, everything 60 rupees. Total comes down to 236. Now retailer selling the goods to the ultimate consumer, and now he has to levy the sales tax 236 into 10%, which comes down to 23.6, and I have rounded up to 24 rupees. Any problem now? So total comes down to invoice value 260. Now ultimately the goods are going to sell to consumer at 260 rupees. This is how the transactions under the sales tax system in existence before the introduction of VAT at the state level. Now moving on. Sir, what is the major drawback in the sales tax system is cascading effect of taxes. The major drawback in the sales tax system is cascading effect of taxes. Cascading effect means tax on tax. Now, do we have the concept of cascading effect of taxes in this transaction? Answer is yes. On this 160 rupees, the cost element is only 150. 10 rupees is a tax element. Here 110 he has to record it now. 100 cost, 10 rupees tax. And 160 low, 100 cost 50 rupees tax. Sorry, 150 cost 10 rupees tax. On that 10 rupees, again the tax is levying 176. Now on this 236 rupees, the cost element is 100 plus 50, 150 plus 60, 210 rupees only. 26 rupees, this tax element of 10 rupees and 60 rupees. 26 rupees are there in this 236 rupees. Yes or no? Right? Now on that tax element, again it is taxed. Again we are levying tax. So multiple taxes, tax on tax, tax on tax on tax. Cascading effect of taxes. Because of this, what's happening? The sales price increasing. Burden on consumer increasing. It leads to inflation. So rise in prices leads to inflation. Burden on consumer increases. Right? The purchasing power of the buyer will get decreases. Unnecessary problems creating. So that is why in the year 2005, right, we have seen the concept of value added taxation system even at the state level. Right? Now, after the introduction of VAT, look at the same transaction after the introduction of VAT. So after the introduction of VAT in the year 2005, GST is a value added tax. That is why I have taken the example of VAT and if you understand why the VAT was introduced, then you can easily understand why the GST was introduced. Are you following now? I'm coming from the roots. If you understand the fundamentals, roots basically, then you can understand the introduction of GST with very clarity. Is that clear, everyone? Now, after the introduction of GST, same situation. Raw materials 60 rupees. Value addition at the manufacturer stage 40 rupees. I'm not changing any values. So the total cost and margin includes 100 rupees. Now VAT. After the 2005, state government started levying the VAT element. So VAT at the rate of 10%. VAT at the rate of 10%. Right? 10 rupees. So invoice value 110 rupees. Invoice value 110 rupees. So that means wholesaler should pay 110 rupees to the manufacturer. Wholesaler should pay 110 rupees to the manufacturer for buying the goods. But wholesaler in his books of account, he will record the cost of purchases only 100 rupees, not 110 rupees. Not 110 rupees. Earlier, under the sales tax system, he have shown 110 rupees as the cost of goods purchased. But under the VAT system, he will show only 100 rupees only, sir. Why? I'll tell you in 2 minutes. Now, value addition at this stage, 50 rupees. Total 150. Now, since wholesaler engaging in the selling of the goods to retailer, he is supposed to levy the VAT at the rate of 10%. 150 into 10%, 15 rupees. Total invoice value come down to 165. Though the retailer paid 165 to the wholesaler, but the retailer shows in his books of account the cost of goods purchased only 150 rupees. He will not add this tax element to the cost of goods purchased. Now the value addition at the retailer stage 60 rupees. Then total comes down to 210. Now the retailer selling the goods to consumer, he has to levy the VAT at the rate of 10%, 21 rupees. The total invoice value come down to 231. And that means the ultimate selling price to consumer 231 rupees under the VAT system, where sales tax prevailing, the ultimate selling price to consumer 260 rupees. You can see a dramatic decrease in the selling price to the extent of 29 rupees. Earlier, the same product used to sell to the consumer at 260 rupees. Now, after the introduction of VAT, the same product is going to sell to the consumer only 231 rupees. 29 rupees selling price reduced. And the burden on consumer reduced or not reduced. See, the main advantage of the value added taxation system is allowing input tax credit. By allowing the input tax credit, we have successfully eliminated cascading effect of taxes, which is the major drawback under the sales tax system. So the major introduction, the reason behind the introduction of VAT is The elimination of cascading effect of taxes. And how we got that? By allowing the seamless input tax credit at every stage of the sale. The advantage is that successful elimination of cascading effect of taxes. Elimination is successful elimination of the cascading effect of taxes. And how we got that? By allowing the seamless input tax credit at every stage of the sale. Now, what is input tax credit? Before that, you need to learn some basics. So, what do you mean by output value, sales value? Output value or sales value, one and the same. Outward supplies, outputs, outward supplies, and the supplies which we are making, sales. The goods are going out now, the services are going out now. So, outward supplies value, sales value. Inputs, purchases. Inputs means purchases. Inward supplies, the goods which we are receiving in, the services which we are receiving. That is what we call inward supplies. The goods are coming in, services are receiving in. So inward supplies, inputs, purchases. Output tax, tax collected on sales. By selling the goods or providing the services, whatever the tax we are going to collect, that is what we call output tax. Next, input tax means tax paid on purchases. Tax paid on purchases. Next, input tax credit. Taking the credit of input tax from output tax. Taking the credit of input tax from output tax. Basically, whatever the input taxes we have paid at the time of inward supplies, that input taxes we can avail as credit from output tax collected by making outward supplies. By making outward supplies, we are going to collect the output tax. Whatever the output tax we collected, that should be remitted to the department. Before the remittance, whatever the input tax we have paid earlier, that input tax you can take it as credit. Taking credit means what? Retaining that portion of tax with you. Only the balance amount should be paid to GST department. Are you following now? Right? Input tax credit is always an asset to you. Output tax is a liability. Input tax credit is an asset item. If you look at the balance sheet, input tax credit balance shown in the assets side. Input tax, nothing but a prepayment of tax, a kind of advance tax we are paying. Is that clear, everyone? Now, look at this example, how that input tax credit allowed here. So, manufacturer being, he is the first stage supplier. For the first stage suppliers, there will be no input tax credit. So, whatever the output tax that manufacturer has collected by selling the goods to wholesaler, that entire output tax becomes a VAT liability of the manufacturer. He will remit the same to respect to state VAT department. Right now, he is a first state supplier. First state supplier won't get any input tax credit. Now coming to the wholesaler. Wholesaler, by selling the goods to retailer, he collected an output tax of 15 rupees. Now this 15 rupees, he should be remitted to the state VAT department. But before remitting the same, at the time of buying the goods from the manufacturer, the wholesaler has paid 10 rupees input tax. He will retain that 10 rupees, only the 5 rupees ultimately he paid to the VAT department. Are you following now? 15 rupees is the output tax collected by wholesaler by selling the goods to retailer. And 10 rupees is the input tax paid by him at the time of buying the goods from manufacturer. That input tax he will take as credit from the output tax. Only the balance amount he will pay to the department. He will be paid to the department. Now coming to the retailer. By selling the goods to consumer, retailer has collected 21 rupees. Retailer has collected 21 rupees. Now, is he supposed to pay entire 21 rupees to GST department, VAT department? No, not required. Not required. Because he has already paid 15 rupees input tax while buying the goods from wholesaler. That 15 rupees, he will take it as credit. Only balance 6 rupees, he will pay him. Only the balance 6 rupees, he will pay to the department. Right, value added tax. It's nothing but a tax on value addition. Basically, you can see that it's a tax on sales and purchases. No, it's only the tax on value addition. Whatever the value added, whatever the value added At every stage of the sale, only on that value addition, the tax is leviable. You can see here, you can just look at the manufacturer stage. What is the value addition at him? 60 plus 40, 100 rupees is a value addition at the manufacturer, right? 100 rupees. Now, what is the ultimate liability of the manufacturer? 10 rupees. 100 is a value addition. Rate of tax 10%. 100 into 10%. 10 rupees is the ultimate VAT liability of the manufacturer. Coming to the wholesaler, what is the value addition at his stage? 50 rupees only. You cannot say 150 because this is the 100 value added at the manufacturer stage, not at the wholesaler stage. At the wholesaler stage, what is the value added? 50 rupees. What is the rate of tax? 10%. 50 into 10%. The ultimate liability of the wholesaler, 5 rupees. Clear? Now coming to the retailer, what is the value addition at his stage? 60 rupees. What is the tax rate? 10%. 16 to 10%. The ultimate tax paid by the retailer is 6 rupees. Clear now? This is the concept of value added tax. In the same example holds good even for the GST. You just simple what you can do is instead of writing VAT, you can write GST. An example for GST. Are you following now? Instead of writing the VAT, you can write here GST. If it is an intrastate sale, CGST, SGST. CGST, SGST. If it is an interstate sale, IGST. That's it. Even GST is a value added tax. That is why I have taken the example of VAT for the better understanding. For the better understanding. Clear, ma'am? So, CEN-VAT, Central Value Added Tax, introduced in the year 1986 at the central level. State Value Added Tax introduced in the year state level in the year 2005. Though these were introduced, the VAT concept was introduced at the central level and state level. Very happy. There is no cascading effect of taxes at central level and state level. But when a person engaged in both interstate transactions, intrastate transactions, you know what? The cascading effect of taxes comes into picture. Though we have the VAT at the central level and state level, there is no integration between these two. And even after the introduction of VAT concept at central level and state level, still there is the existence of cascading effect of taxes because of non-integration of central taxes with state taxes. Even that portion also I will explain with the example. Don't worry, ma. Right. So now for making the integration of all taxes, right? Central taxes, state taxes, no such a kind of taxation system. In India, one nation, one tax. Across the India, there should be one taxation system. That is why they have introduced the concept of GST in the year 2017. 1st July 2017 is the date of birth of GST. Date of birth of the GST. It is just a 4-year baby. 2018, 2019, 2020. Yeah, 4th year is running. 4th year is running. That 4 years baby, you believe it or not, producing approximately 20 plus lakhs crores in a year. 22 lakhs, 23 lakhs, approximately 23 lakhs crores producing this 4-year baby. The tax revenues to our government of India. The major revenues to the government. Now moving on. Need for GST. So why GST was introduced? First reason that what I've told you right now, deficiencies in the existing indirect taxes regime, right? The drawbacks in the existing taxation system. See, if you look at the manufacturer stage, so manufacturer excess duty on goods, service tax and services, the both he can avail as input tax credit. He can avail as input tax credit. And manufacturer, whatever the goods he manufactured, by selling them, he will collect the output VAT, and anyhow he will be having the input VAT. So whereby he can avail input tax credit of VAT. At the manufacturer stage, there is no cascading effect of taxes. Very happy. But if you look at the VAT dealer stage, a trader, VAT dealer means trader, can be distributor, can be wholesaler, can be retailer. right? From the manufacturer, wholesaler buys the goods and sale value 1000 rupees. Since the manufacturer engaged in the manufacturing of the goods, he's supposed to pay the excise duty, and whatever the excise duty he paid, that excise duty is forming part of the sales value, and VAT is forming part, right now. And if any services he was utilized for manufacturing these goods, service tax also is leviable. And totally, the manufacturer sells the goods to 1500 rupees at 1500 rupees. Now, among these, now the manufacturer has levied excise duty, VAT, and service tax on wholesaler. On wholesaler, right now. For manufacturer, wholesaler is the customer. He has to collect all this from the customer only now. So, manufacturer levied excise duty, VAT, and service tax from wholesaler collected. Now, for the wholesaler, all of these taxes allowed as creditor? No. Only this VAT portion is allowed as credit. This excess duty not allowed as credit, and this service tax is not allowed as credit. These both were not allowed as credit to wholesalers. Not allowed. Why? Because wholesaler, what is the business activity of the wholesaler? He just engaged in buying and selling of the goods. Buying and selling of the goods. Sir, why can't he avail this 200 excess duty as credit? Now, wholesaler paid this 200 to manufacturer at the time of purchasing. And that means this 200 becomes input excess duty to wholesaler. That input excess duty can be availed as credit from output excess duty. When the output excess duty is collected, when we were engaged in the manufacturing. Wholesaler, is he a manufacturer? No. If he is a manufacturer, how can he call as a wholesaler? Ante, for a wholesaler, there is no output excess duty. But I mean, manufacturing cheyadu kada, but output excess duty arise avdaniki. So since there is no output excess duty, this input excess duty not allowed as credit. So when the credit is not allowed, what he will do generally? He will add to the cost of the asset. He will just simply add it to cost of the asset. And in the similar manner, service tax also not allowed as credit to wholesaler. This input service tax, you can be allowed as credit, you can be taken as credit only from output service tax. And how the output service tax will be generated? The output service tax will be generated only when you are engaged in providing the services. Only when you are engaged in providing of services, provision of services. You must be a service provider. But here your status is wholesaler. You are not going to provide any services. That means you are not going to have any service tax, output service tax. When you don't have output service tax, you cannot avail this service tax as credit. So this will also be added to the cost of the goods. So 1000 is the actual invoice value. Add excess duty 200, add service tax 200, total comes down to 1400. And this is the value addition at the wholesaler stage. And totally 2000 rupees. In this 2000, we have the excess duty of 200, we have the service tax of 200. Now wholesaler, he will sell the goods to retailer. Now the wholesaler has to levy the VAT at the rate of 10% on 2000. And in this 2400 is a tax element on which again the tax is levied. And what happening, ma? Cascading effect of taxes. What's happening? Cascading effect of taxes. And again, that main problem is non-integration of central taxes with state taxes. See, when the wholesaler asked to take the credit of excess duty and service tax, he said to the state government, sir, by selling the goods, I'm collecting 200 now. From this 200, I would like to take my excess duty and my service taxes credit. State government will simply question, to whom you paid excess duty and service tax? Sir, I paid to central government. Go and ask central government. You paid the taxes to central government and asking the credit to me. No taxes emo central government paid esi, credit emo state government adite, state government enduku isse credit neeku? Credit తీసుకుంటున్నాము అంటే sir, that's an advantage to you, that's a loss to government. And if in case if you are eligible to take the credit, what you will do, ma? This 200 will be adjusted to this అవుట్పుట్ వ్యాట్ ఆఫ్ 200. అంటే నువ్వు స్టేట్ గవర్నమెంట్ ఎంత ట్యాక్స్ పే చేస్తావు? 0. అంటే లాస్ ఆఫ్ రెవెన్యూ టు స్టేట్ గవర్నమెంట్ అన్నట్టేగా. దట్స్ ద మెయిన్ రీజన్. That's the main reason behind non-integration of taxes. Non-integration of central taxes with the state taxes. Are you following now? Right. Non-integration of central taxes with state taxes. Yes, the ultimate burden falls on consumer only. The ultimate burden falls on consumer only. See, in case if the wholesaler not able to get the credit, what he will do, he will simply add the taxes to cost and he will collect from the ultimate consumer. The burden on consumer increases, rise in prices leads to inflation. Clear? Next, when it comes to the service provider stage, for service provider, excess duty and service tax allowed as credit. Excess duty is a central tax, service tax is a central tax. Both are eligible for credit. But for service provider, VAT is not allowed as credit because VAT is a state government tax. Service tax is a central government tax. Again, non-integration. So hence, VAT is not eligible to credit. When the VAT is not allowed as credit, what the service provider will do? He will simply add to the cost of provision of services. Leads to rise in prices, leads to cascading effect of taxes. Again, the same situation comes into picture. Next, look at this example. Look at this example. Mr. X, a dealer from Hyderabad, purchased goods from Mr. Y, who is from Chennai. Now, is it said to be intrastate transaction or interstate transaction? Interstate transaction, right? So, interstate purchases where the seller, Mr. Y, he will levy the CST, Central Sales Tax. Central Sales Tax. Right, ma. Let it be he was levied 10,000 rupees on Mr. X. Now, Mr. X selling the same goods to Mr. Z. Selling the same goods to Mr. Z. Who is from Warangal? Who is from Warangal? I am from Warangal. He is from Warangal. Right. Both Hyderabad and Warangal belonging to the same state. State of Telangana, right? So intrastate transactions or intrastate transactions, VAT is leviable. VAT is leviable. So now Mr. X will collect a VAT of 15,000 rupees from Mr. Z. Now what X is thinking, he would like to claim this input CST which he had paid at the time of purchase of goods from Y, Chennai. But department said no. Whatever the input tax you have paid, whatever the input tax you have paid to another state government. You have paid to Tamil Nadu state government and asking the credit to Telangana state government. Not allowed. Not allowed. Because it is a central tax. It is a state tax. CST is a central tax. VAT is a state tax. Again, there is no integration. Again, there is no integration. Non-integration of taxes. Are you following, ma'am? Right? Now, when the CST is not allowed as credit, what the Mr. X will do, ma'am? He will simply add to the cost of the product. He will simply add to the cost of the product. Right? By adding to the cost of the product, what's happening? It leads to inflation, rise in prices, cascading effect of taxes. So these are the main reasons why the GST was introduced, to bring the integration between the state taxes and central taxes. Between the state taxes and central taxes. Now, say state taxes can be availed as credit from central taxes and vice versa. And vice versa. Next. This is about the customs duty structure before GST and after GST. If you take the example, you need product X. You have two options. One, you can purchase it. I mean, you can directly manufacturing on your own. You can manufacture it. Two, you can purchase either from the same state are from other states of the same country, or you can import from other countries. You can import from other countries, right? Like first look at the manufacturing option. If you are engaged in the manufacturing, you have to pay excise duty. You have to pay excise duty since you are engaged in the manufacturing. You have to pay service taxes if any services used in the manufacturing of these goods. And then you have to pay VAT and CST. Because for the manufacturing, we will purchase some input goods, raw materials, components, consumables like that. Then we have to pay VAT and CST. Right. Now, if you look at the import option, you are importing the same product X from other countries. Now, you supposed to pay basic customs duty, CVD, which is called as countervailing duty, and then special CVD, special countervailing duty, and then NCCD, National Calamity and Contingency Duty. National Calamity and Contingency Duty. Oh, National Contingency and Calamity Duty. And you supposed to pay 4 taxes: basic customs duty, BCD, basic customs duty, CVD, countervailing duty, special CVD, and NCCD. Sir, why this CVD and special CVD? See, are we supposed to encourage imports or discourage imports? Always discourage. We always have to discourage imports. So you are importing the goods means, first thing, you are discouraging the domestic manufacturing. Second thing, you are more reliant depending on other countries. Third thing, our foreign exchange reserves are going out of India. These are the main disadvantages of imports. ఒక ప్రోడక్ట్ నువ్వు ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకుంటున్నావు అంటే ఒకటి నువ్వు డొమెస్టిక్ మ్యానుఫ్యాక్చరింగ్ ని డిస్కరేజ్ చేస్తున్నావు అని అర్థం. రెండోది, you are more depending on foreign countries. మూడోది, loss of foreign exchange reserves. So we always have to encourage domestic manufacturing. We should self-reliant. We should depend on ourselves, not on others. Earlier, actually, on imports, government is supposed to levy only basic customs duty. On imports, only basic customs duty was supposed to levy. On domestic manufacturing, all these are levied only. It seems that imports are subject to lower tax. That is why the government has introduced CVD, special CVD, and NCCD. CVD is a compensatory tax of basic excise duty. See, you are buying the goods from other countries, and that means you are not buying from India. And that means our Indian government is losing excise duty revenues. How? If you purchase from India, someone would have manufactured it, right, ma? He manufactured, na? He's supposed to pay what? Excise duty. He would have paid excise duty. And our Indian government would have get excise duty revenues. Since you are not buying from India, our Indian government losing excise duty revenues. In order to compensate, counterbalance the loss of excise duty revenues, they levy the CVD. In the similar manner, if you bought from India, either from your same state or from other states of India, you would have paid VAT or CST. And that respective state governments would have received the VAT or CST revenues. But when you purchase from other countries, the respective state government is losing this VAT or CST revenues. For counterbalancing this VAT or CST revenues, our central government started levying the special CVD. Now, whatever the revenues the central government got by levying the special CVD, that will be remitted to the respective state governments. So these are the taxes levied before the GST on imports. Now, after the GST on imports, now we are levying basic customs duty as it is. In the place of CVD and special CVD. Now we are levying what? Now we are levying IGST. And NCCT remains to be common. Now after the GST on imports, what we are levying? We are levying basic customs duty, IGST, NCCD. Is that clear? Next. And this constitution of GST, GST Council, all the complaints, you just go through it. Before GST, after GST, you can see on intrastate sales, VAT is leviable. It is an exclusive right of the state government. State government. Now after GST, on intrastate sales, now central government also got the power to levy the tax. Now on intrastate sales, what are we levying, ma? We are levying CGST, SGST. We are levying CGST, SGST. And now the central government have the power to levy the tax on intrastate sales. Now earlier on services, it is an exclusive right of the central government to levy the service tax. It is an exclusive right of the central government to levy the service tax. But after GST, now on services, even state government also got the power, right? Even the state government also got the power to levy the tax. On intrastate supply of services, CGST and SGST is leviable. And the state government also have now the power to levy the tax on services. And now registration under GST. Right? Whether a particular supplier is liable to registration or not is purely depending upon his aggregate turnover. Is purely depending upon his aggregate turnover. Earlier we used to have only one limit, threshold limit across the India, but now we have a separate limits and limit of 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 40 lakhs. Now the limit of 10 lakhs applicable only to these 4 states. Only these 4 states: Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura, Manipur. For these 4 states, the aggregate turnover is 10 lakhs. Now the threshold limit of 20 lakhs applicable to these states: Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, Puducherry, and Telangana. For Telangana, now the limit is 20 lakhs. Right? If your aggregate turnover exceeded 20 lakhs, if your aggregate turnover exceeded 20 lakhs, then you are liable for registration. You should be registered with the GST department. Next. Threshold limit for registration. If you are exclusively engaged in the supply of goods, and that is to intrastate. If you are exclusively engaged in the supply of goods, that is to intrastate. Within the same state only you are selling the goods, supplying the goods. Now the limit is 40 lakhs. See, the higher threshold limit of 40 lakhs should be applied on satisfaction of 2 conditions. 1, you should be exclusively engaged in the supply of goods. 2, you should be supply the goods only within the same state. Then the higher threshold limit of 40 lakhs applicable to you. And that's applicable to Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Assam, and remaining all other states other than the states mentioned above. And for services, always 20 lakhs. The higher threshold limit of 40 lakhs not applicable to services. For services, the threshold limit is 20 lakhs. And then GST Common Portal, this we already know, gst.gov.in is a GST Common Portal. And next, about the input tax credit that we already know. And interstate supply. Interstate supply means supplies between 2 different states. 2 different states, or between a state and a union territory. That is what we call interstate supplies, on which IGST is leviable. On which IGST is leviable. Okay, ma'am. Now this utilization of input tax credit, anyhow this topic we will get in the chapter input tax credit, that is chapter number 6. There I'll tell you in detail. So that's the end of the first chapter. End of the first chapter. Right? Let's look into the material ones. Thereby, if any important topics missed out, I will explain. Just give me a section. So everyone able to see the material now on your screens? Right. So let's see whatever the topics we have covered. Very good. And this necessity for collection of taxes, branches of taxation, these are the basic introductions. The features of indirect taxes, concept of and GST and need for GST, this we have covered as it is very important. And GST, yes, this is a highlight point. GST is a destination based tax. GST is a destination based tax, and that means the GST revenues accrues to the destination state government rather than the origin state government. Like, sir, I am a supplier from the state of Telangana, sell the goods to, a supplier or a recipient from the state of Karnataka. Now, Telangana is said to be the origin state, Karnataka is said to be the destination state. Now, in this transaction, which state government will get the GST revenues? Answer is Karnataka state government will get the revenues. Sir, why the government, the destination governments will get the revenues? See, if you made the concept like origin state government will get the revenues, in India, where we have 29 states, across all the 29 states, origin state governments hardly 10 or less than 10, if you ask me. The majority of the manufacturing, majority of the sales, majority of the provision of services happening only from less than 10 states only. If you put the provision like origin state government will get GST revenues, out of the 29 state governments of India, hardly 10 governments or even less than 10 state governments will get GST revenues, will enjoy GST revenues. Are you following now? That is why GST has made us destination based taxation system. Right, ma? It is relevant where the goods are destined, where the goods are consumed. That is what ultimately relevant. From where the sales taken place, from where the manufacturing taken place, from where the services are provided, all these are irrelevant. All these are irrelevant. We can just look at this last point. The entire revenue relating to the goods or services will accrue in the jurisdiction where they are being ultimately consumed. Clear, ma? So that's an important point. And need for GST, this all we are covered in our explanation. And you can see here what are the previous taxes are subsumed into GST and what are the different taxes are subsumed into GST. At the central level, excess duty, additional excess duty, service tax, all these are subsumed into GST. At the VAT level, state level, VAT, sales tax, luxury tax, tax on advertisements, all these are subsumed into the GST amount. The taxable event under GST is supply. Right? What do you mean by the supply? I will tell you in the second chapter. The second chapter, entire second chapter is about only one word, supply. Right? There I will tell you what is supply. Next, benefits of GST. Right? The main advantage of the GST. It is a win-win situation. And it is advantageous situation to the all the manufacturers, service providers and traders, and it is advantageous situation to the government as well. Right? GST will lower the cost of the goods and services. Why? Because we successfully eliminated that cascading effect of taxes. So when you eliminated the cascading effect of taxes, obviously the price of the goods comes down. You have seen that example. Before the VAT element, before the VAT system, the ultimate selling price to the consumer 260 rupees. After the introduction of VAT, the ultimate selling price to the consumer 231 rupees. 29 rupees is decrease in the selling price. Right now. And next, give a boost to the economy because the purchasing power of the buyer will get increases. Right? A reduction in prices, buying power of the consumer increases, and even our products make it marketable globally competitive. Our products is now globally competitive. Right? Yeah, that's the point covered here. Right. Next. Constitution of GST. These are all the compliance provision. You can just look at. Gopi Adapu, what are you doing, mom? So the GST is a new taxation system for which there is no entry was there in the Indian Constitution. See, for any taxation system which should be introduced into India, it should be introduced with a proper authorization from the Indian Constitution. With proper authorization from the Indian Constitution. Without having the Indian authorization from the Indian Constitution, no taxation system should be introduced into India. But for sir, Indian Constitution was prepared in the year 1950 and GST was introduced into India in the year 2017. And how we got an entry into Indian Constitution for the introduction of this GST. See, literally speaking, there is no separate entry, a special entry in Indian Constitution for the introduction of GST. That is why the Indian Constitution have been amended. Sir, can we amend Indian Constitution? Absolutely yes. More than 100 times, more than 100 times, our Indian Constitution have been amended till today. That 101st Constitutional Amendment Act is for GST. 101st time we have amended our Indian Constitution for creating some separate entries, some new entries for giving authorization to the central government for the introduction of GST. So the central government amended Indian Constitution, inculcated some new entries and showed to the public, yes, this entry giving authorization to me for the levy of GST, for the introduction of GST. So వాళ్ళకి వాళ్ళే అమెండ్మెంట్ క్రియేట్ చేసుకొని వాళ్ళకి వాళ్ళే ఆథరైజేషన్స్ ఇచ్చేసుకొని వాళ్ళకి వాళ్ళే ఇగో ఈ పర్టిక్యులర్ ఆర్టికల్ మాకు ఆథరైజేషన్ ఇచ్చింది, వీఆర్ ఇంట్రడ్యూసింగ్ GST, రైట్ మా? సరే. So 101st Constitutional Amendment Act is the GST ma, where we have seen some new entries. That article number 246A, it's a new entry ma. This is the article where central government and state government got the powers to levy GST. Article 246A given the powers to the central government and state government for the introduction of GST, for the levy of GST. And after that, Article 279A. Article 279A given the power to the central government, given the power only to the central government for the levy of IGST, for the levy of IGST, right? Now let's moving on. So even though the GST was introduced, still these goods were not covered in GST yet. There are certain goods, they are still taxing under existing taxation system only. What are they? They are high-speed diesel oil, petroleum crude oil, ATF, aviation turbine fuel, aviation turbine fuel, which is known as white petrol, which is known as white petrol, which is used in the aeroplanes, flights. Then natural gas and motor spirit known as petrol. So high-speed diesel oils, petroleum crude oils, ATF, natural gas, petrol, these five products not yet being covered under GST. Still these five products are taxing under existing taxation system only. Next. Article 269A. Article 269A given the power to the central government for the levy of IGST and also given the power to the central government to levy the IGST on imports as well. On imports as well. Coming to the GST Council, GST Council is the decision-making body of the GST. Whatever the amendments, changes happening to the GST, that has been made by the GST Council only, and who is the chairperson of the GST Council? Union Finance Minister. At present, who is our Union Finance Minister? Nirmala Sitharaman is a chairperson of the GST Council, and all other state governments' financial ministers are the members of GST Council. framework of GST. In different countries, we have different GST frameworks. In India, we are following what? In India, we are following the concurrent dual GST model. Concurrent dual GST model. And both state government and central government have the power to levy the taxes on goods and as well as services. Right. Then manner of utilization of input tax credit. This I will tell you in the chapter number 6. Right now. So this is the end of the first chapter. Now moving on to the second chapter. Right. Look at the chapter number 2, sir. Supply under GST. Right. So, sir, what is actually supply? First of all, before going to what do you mean by the supply, let's try to understand the concept of taxable event. Taxable event. Taxable event explains about the point at which the tax would be levied. You can see here the point at which the tax would be levied. That is what we call taxable event. Levy of tax, incidence of tax, explained under the taxable event. See, basically, sir, under the GST, the taxable event is supply. Whenever you are engaged in supply of goods or supply of services or supply of both, you are liable to GST. The GST is leviable. Whenever you are engaged in the supply of goods or supply of services or supply of both, taxable event arises. GST is leviable on you. What do you mean by supply? There I will that is what I am going to explain. But existing taxation system, as we have seen, we have multiple taxation systems. Excise duty, the taxable event is manufacturing or production of goods. Service tax, the taxable event is provision of services. VAT, taxable event is intrastate sales. CST, taxable event is interstate sales. Customs duty, the taxable event is import of or export of transactions. And for the various taxation systems, we used to have various taxable events. And it leads to unnecessary ambiguity when what kind of taxation should be levied, when should be levied, at what time we should be levied, what is the rate of tax, unnecessary complexions, ambiguities arise. But now under GST, an integrated taxation system have been introduced, a single taxable event, supply. If you are engaging in the supply, levy the GST. That's it. Are you following now? Sir, what do you mean by the supply? Supply is a word explained in section number 7. Section number 7 explains about the meaning and scope of supply. Meaning and scope of supply, in which we have some sections, subsections, clauses, schedules, section 7.1a, 7.1b, 7.1c, read with schedule 1, 2, 3. Right, all this we are going to learn here. Section 8 explains about the taxability of composite and mixed supplies. Schedule 1 explains about the concept of deemed supplies. Schedule 2 discussed about matters to be treated as supply of goods or as supply of services. Schedule 3 explains about matters to be treated as neither supply of goods nor supply of services. In simple words, Schedule 3 explains about negative list of supplies. Schedule 3 explains about negative list of supplies. Let us see one by one. Supply includes, supply excludes. Sir, in order to treat a particular transaction as supply, the supply should be made and the transaction should satisfy some parameters. That supply should be satisfy some parameters, like supply should be made in the course or in furtherance of business. Supply should be made for a consideration. Supply should be made by the taxable person. It should be made in the taxable territory. Are you following now? There are some parameters. Only if that parameters are satisfied, then only that particular transaction should be treated as supply. Clear now? So supply should be made for the consideration or in the course of furtherance of business. 7.1a, import of services, right, for consideration. Supplies without consideration, Schedule 1. Classification, Schedule 2. Negative list, Schedule 3. Supply excludes negative list of services. What are they? I will tell you in Schedule 2. Next. Section 7.1a. Supply should be made in the course or in furtherance of business, and it should be for consideration. As I said just now, there are some parameters. Right? There are some parameters. What are that? First one is that supply should be of goods or services. Supply should be of goods or services. Supply of anything other than goods or services like money, securities, etc. not to be treated as, taxable supplies, and they are not liable to GST. We have definitions to the goods only, where we are going to learn goods includes all types of movable properties other than money, securities, everything we are going to see. And on pure monetary transactions or transactions involving securities, not liable to GST. Not liable to GST. Right, ma? Now look at here. So second one, supply should be made for a consideration. Third one, supply should be made in the course or in furtherance of business, and supply should be made by a taxable person, and it should be taxable supply. If all these 5 parameters are satisfied, then only it should be treated as a supply. Now after that, you have the detailed analysis of each and every parameter. Right? What are the different modes of supply? It includes sales and transfer, barter and exchange, license, lease, rentals. Right? So the first of all, whenever we said supply, the first point which comes into our mind is sales. Okay, only those who are involving in sales are said to be engaged in supplies. No, sale is a part of supply only. It is just like the definition of transfer in capital gains chapter. Capital gains chapter law, section 2, clause 47 explains about the definition of transfer. Akkada kuda manaki entama transfer anangane, okay, selling of capital asset is a transfer ane first thought mana mind loki vastadi. But transfer also includes exchange, extinguishment, relinquishment, compulsory acquisition, conversion of capital asset into stock in trade. Like this, we have various provisions. In the similar manner, ikkada kuda supply anangane sale okkate mind lo raakudamma. Sale is a part of a supply, but supply also includes transfer, barter, exchange, license, lease transactions, rentals. All these are also covered under supply. Next. After that, you have the definition of that words. Then after that, you have the definition of goods. The important point you need to highlight here is goods means every kind of movable property, and that means immovable properties are out of the purview of GST because they are not goods. GST abbreviation ఏంటమ్మా? Goods and Services Tax. Goods and Services Tax. Are you following now? Nowadays, GST have multiple meanings. ఎవరికి నచ్చింది వాడు పెట్టేసుకుంటున్నాడమ్మా. ఎవరికి నచ్చేసి వాడు పెట్టేసుకున్నాడు. Night when you are chatting with your someone, and at the end of the chatting, they are putting GST. ఈడేంటబ్బా GST అంటున్నాడు. అడిగావు నీకు GST అంటే నాకు తెలిసింది ఒకటేరా, గూడ్స్ అండ్ సర్వీసెస్ ట్యాక్స్. GST అంటే ఏంటమ్మా? మీకు తెలిసిన GST ఏంటో చెప్పండి. నాకు తెలిసిన GST ఒకటే, గూడ్స్ అండ్ సర్వీసెస్ ట్యాక్స్. What are the other meanings you know about the GST? Very good, Raghavendra. Surya Deja, correct. Shravani Reddy, correct. So ఇంత టాలెంట్ ఎక్కడి నుంచి వస్తుందమ్మా మీకు? జిఎస్టీ అంటేనంట, G stands for good night, S stands for sweet dreams, T stands for take care under. Recently, I got to know this. The other meaning of GST. మన యూనియన్ ఫైనాన్స్ మినిస్టర్స్ లేదా ఈ ట్యాక్స్ రికమెండేషన్స్ ట్యాక్స్ రిఫార్మ్స్ కమిటీస్ వెళ్ళింటే చచ్చిపోతారమ్మా మీరు చెప్పే జిఎస్టీ మీనింగ్స్. ఆడగడు ఉన్నాడు ఆర్జీ, వాడు స్పెషల్ మీనింగ్ చెప్పాడు. రైట్, సరే కమ్ బ్యాక్. సో గూడ్స్ మీన్స్ ఆఫ్ ఎవ్రీ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ మూవబుల్ ప్రాపర్టీ. అమ్మ ఫ్యాన్స్ ఎవరన్నా ఉంటే హట్ అయితే ఐమ్ వెరీ సారీ. రైట్, గూడ్స్ మీన్స్ ఎవ్రీ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ మూవబుల్ ప్రాపర్టీ. రైట్ మా. సో అంటే immovable properties are outside the purview of GST. Are outside the purview of GST. Immovable properties, as they are not goods. As they are not goods. When something is not covered under the definition of goods, it is not liable to GST. It is not liable to GST. Are you following me? Next, other than money and securities. Other than money and securities. Right. And money and securities not liable to GST. But any transactions which arranging the settlement of securities, and like stock broking services, commission agent services, right? These services again liable to GST. So you should be very careful. Next. What do you mean by services? Services means anything other than goods. Yeah, this is the point I've just explained. Securities are excluded from the definition of both goods and services. They are neither goods nor services, right? But this is very important one. However, facilitating or arranging the transactions in securities liable to GST. This is a very important one. Example also given there. Service charges or service fees in relation to the transactions in securities, etc. Right? If stock broking charges untai, that is liable to GST. Next. And after that, you have the definition of money. Right. Second point is that supply should be made for a consideration. Consideration is a very important factor for the levy of GST. Consideration should be there. And that consideration, you may be received from the directly from recipient, or you may be received from a third party to contract. You may be receiving the same from third party to the contract. Are you following now? Even a third party to the contract can make the payment of consideration. What is ultimately important here is existence of consideration. Whether you are receiving from the recipient, whether you are receiving from the third party, irrelevant. That is liable to GST. Are you following now? Next, about the security deposits, caution deposits. Basically, security deposits, caution deposits are said to be, refundable in nature. Refundable nature kabatti not liable to GST. Refundable nature kabatti not liable to GST. But if the same is adjusted towards value of supply, right, then that security deposit, that caution deposit is liable to GST. It is to be treated as forming part of supply, liable to GST. But while determining the consideration, if you have received any subsidy from central government and state government, that subsidy amount should be deducted, shall not include consideration. This is a point given here. This is a point given here, ma. Any subsidy received from the central government or state government not forming part of consideration. Not forming part of consideration. But if you are receiving subsidy from any other entities other than central government and state government, then it is always forming part of consideration. Okay, now next. Consideration can also be in cash, can also be in kind. Act of forbearance, example column. Yeah, I'll tell you about this point. Any act of forbearance. Forbearance means tolerance. Tolerance. And tolerating the act of others. Tolerating the act of others. Example, ma. I'll give you an example. See, if you take the example of Metro Rail project of Hyderabad, initially the Metro Rail project was not given to L&T. Initially it was not given to Larsen and Toubro. To whom it was given, ma'am? Initially the project is given to Matus Infra. Matus Infra. Right, this is a construction company which has got L&T Metro Rail project, that Hyderabad Metro Rail project initially, but later on it was becoming impossible for Matus Infra to continue the project, and they lifted their hands. మే ప్రాజెక్ట్ చేయలేమని చెప్పి చేతులు ఎత్తేస్తే అప్పుడు L&T వాళ్ళని పిలిచి L&T వాళ్ళకి ఈ ప్రాజెక్ట్ అనేది హ్యాండ్ ఓవర్ చేయడం జరిగిందమ్మా. Matus Infra, whose company it is? Any idea? Anyone? Yes, very good, ma'am. Shanu and Yogesh. It is Satyam's Ramalingaraju Sons Company. Ramalingaraju వాళ్ళ sons established చేసిన కంపెనీ అమ్మ ఇది. It is the reverse of Satyam. Matus is the reverse of Satyam. The reverse లో చదవండి, you will get Satyam. నిజంగానే ఈ కంపెనీ పెట్టి సత్యం ఫేట్ ని రివర్స్ చేశారమ్మా. సత్యం ఫేట్ ని రివర్స్ చేసేసారు. వెరీ అన్ఫార్చునేట్. Satyam Computers is one of the leading software companies in India. Entire world ni మన ఇండియా చుట్టూ తిప్పుకుంది in relation to information technology అంటే the credit goes to Satyam Computers. అలాంటి కంపెనీ అసలు లేకుండా చేశారు. వెరీ అన్ఫార్చునేట్. So Satyam Ramalingaraju is one of the eminent person in India, and after using his entire influence, he makes sure that the project is given to Matus Infra. It's actually a new company, sir, at the time of that introduction. Sir, come back to our example. Matus Infra, initially it has committed to take the project and complete the project in time. Basically, when it comes to the construction contracts, the amount will not be given by the government at a time. That amount that will be paid by the government basing upon the completion of the construction. You might have learned in AS7, accounting for construction contracts. Accounting for construction contracts. Right, and percentage of the works completed and certified, to that extent that amounts will be released from the government. And initially that investment should be made by the construction company only. Later on it will get that amounts from government. See, there was no funds from the Matus Infra because of that Satyam fraud came into effect, and the market capitalization has been lost. No funds left with Matus Infra to continue the project. There they lifted hands and చేయలేమండి ప్రాజెక్ట్ అంటే అప్పుడు L&T వాళ్ళని పిలిచి L&T వాళ్ళకి ప్రాజెక్ట్ అనేది హ్యాండ్ ఓవర్ చేయడం జరిగిందమ్మా. మరి ఫాలోయింగ్ నా ఇప్పుడు 11th row, right? And ఇక్కడ what's happening is, because of this there is a delay in completion of the project. Now this delay in project leads to loss of revenue to government. Now the government, for tolerating this act, has claimed liquidated damages from the Matus Infra. Now this liquidated damages liable to GST. So what is the supply involving? Act of forbearance, tolerating the act of others, non-completion of the contract within time, right ma? And that non-completion of contract within time, that act of others we are tolerating. For tolerating this we claimed liquidated damages. Liquidated damages. Now that liquidated damages liable to GST. Clear ma? Next. Artworks sent by the artist to the galleries for exhibition, it is not a supply, as no consideration flows from the gallery to artist. See, whenever you send the artworks to the galleries, you're an artist. You made some artworks, some paintings, some drawings. You have sent the paintings and drawings to the art galleries for exhibiting there. Art galleries for exhibiting there, right? Now the transaction between the artist to gallery, now does this amounts to supply? Does this amounts to liable to GST? Answer is no. You just sending the paintings and drawings to that art gallery for exhibiting in the art gallery. That's it. This is not a supply. Whenever a person came to the art gallery and purchased your artwork, your painting, your drawing, then that is said to be the supply. That is liable to GST. Are you following, ma'am? Next. Supply should be made in the course or in furtherance of business, and the supply should be made in the course of business or at least in furtherance of business, in supportive of business. And all the ancillary and incidental activities also constitute supply as well. Now after that you have the definition of business that you can see. Supply should be made by a taxable person. That means, right, when a person is said to be a taxable person, right, GST is leviable only by the taxable person, and whenever he is registered with the GST department, he will be said to be the taxable person. A registered supplier only is said to be the taxable person. Supply should be made. Supply should be a taxable supply, right? When a supply is said to be taxable supply, when it is liable to GST. When it is liable to GST, then it is said to be the taxable supply. Next, importation of services for consideration. Importation of services for consideration. See, whenever you are importing the services, among these two factors, at least one should be existence. If consideration existing, this factor becomes irrelevance. This factor becomes irrelevant, and in the course or in furtherance of business, irrelevant. If consideration existing, yes, it amounts to supply. When consideration not in existence, this factor coming relevant. And whenever you are importing services without any consideration, then it should be in the course or in furtherance of business. It should be in the course or in furtherance of business. So among these two factors, one should be in existence. Then only it will be treated as supply. Next, supplies without any consideration. See, one of the very important parameter to treat a particular transaction as supply is consideration. Without any consideration, it should not be treated as a supply. But we have four exceptional cases. We have four exceptional cases where even though the consideration factor is missing out, still that transaction should be treated as supply. Still that transactions should be treated as supply. Right. Let me check for the examples. Yes. Let me explain with the help of examples, sir. Yes. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. First transaction. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. Now look at the example here. Infosys, a software company. Infosys, a software company, transferred 200 old computers, donated 200 old computers to an NGO. And that NGO in turn going to use that computers and everything for providing the computer education to the orphans or poor children, economically weaker section people. NGOs generally Section 8 companies, non-profit organizations. So, hence Infosys company has not claimed any consideration. But still, this particular transaction of donating 200 old computers on a permanent basis amounts to supply liable to GST. The only condition is that whenever a permanent transfer or disposal of business assets, the condition to be satisfied is input tax credit should have claimed by the supplier on the goods transferred. Whatever the 200 old computers have been transferred by the Infosys company, the Infosys company would have claimed input tax credit on it at the time of its purchases. Okay, now that's the first transaction. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. Second transaction is supplies between related persons and distinct persons. Supplies between related persons and distinct persons. Right. Now, related persons under example, we can take same family members, employer and employee, principal and agent. Right. Distinct persons and in GST, the registration is state-wise. State-wise registration is there. Distinct person example I've explained here. State-wise registration is there. There is no concept of centralized registration. There is no concept of centralized registration in GST, right? State-wise, everyone has to take state-wise registration. Look at this example, X Limited, having the factory in Hyderabad. So that means its head office is there in Telangana state government. And it is selling the goods from 4 main branches. Branch 1 is from Bangalore, from the state of Karnataka. Branch 2, Mumbai, Maharashtra. Branch 3, Kolkata, West Bengal. Branch 4, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. So it is having 4 branches from 4 different states. Now, is it required to take a single registration for all these 5 premises or 5 separate registrations? It has to take 5 separate registrations since it is having the units in 5 different states. No centralized registration allowed under GST Act. We need to take the registration separately, state-wise, right now. Though all these units are registering separately, since the company is the same, the PAN will be same. GST registration is a PAN-based registration. GST registration is a PAN-based registration. PAN number is compulsory for GST registration. It's compulsory. Exception only we have one exception, NRTP, non-resident taxable person. That I will tell you in the registration chapter. Are you following now? GST is a PAN-based registration. PAN is compulsory. Since the company is the same, the PAN will be same for all these branches. And they all the branches registering with the same PAN number. Sir, is it allowed? Yes. You can register N number of branches with single PAN number. No issues. No issues. Are you following now? Right? Next. You can see here. Sir, centralized registration inka asal possible kada? Possible avutundamma. Centralized registration is possible in GST only when all the branches are locating in same state and all of them are into the same business line, same line of business. Anni branches okay state lo undi, anni branches okay line of business activity lo unte, appudu centralized registration anedi possible avutundi. Now you can take all the branches a single registration. That is the only case where centralized registration is possible in GST. Are you following me? Now, since all the branches are in different states, we supposed to take all the separate registrations with the same PAN number. We can take with same PAN number only. See, though all these branches belong into same establishment, for the GST, they should be treated as a distinct persons. They should be treated as a distinct persons. Branch 1 and branch 2 belonging to same company only, but branch 1 and branch 2 said deemed to be distinct persons. Are you following now? Look at here. Centralized registration is possible only if all the branches locating in the same state and all are into the same business line. Look at here. Branches locating in same state. Business segment, same business segment. Centralized registration or separate registration. Centralized registration possible. All the branches in same state but into different business segments. And one is textile business, one is chemical business, one is pharmaceutical, one is alcoholic liquor, different business segments. Then though all the branches are into same state but engaging into the different business segments, they have to take the separate registrations. Next, branches in different states but into the same business segment. Since they are engaging in different state, separate registration. Different branches in different states and they are into different business segments. Then again separate registration have to be taken. The only possibility of centralized registration, all the branches in same state and all of them are engaged into the same business segment. Then centralized registration is possible in GST. Is that clear, everyone? Right. So supplies between related persons and distinct persons, though the consideration factor is missing out, still it is to be treated as supply. Adi second transaction now. Second transaction, supply between related persons and are distinct persons. Clear? Next. Let me go on to the material ones. Right. So supplies without consideration we are discussing. First transaction, permanent transfer or disposal of business asset completed. Next. So this is the very important point. You just remember here. Business assets transferred on a permanent basis on which the input tax credit have been taken, which were permanently transferred or disposed of, then it is amounts to deemed supply. Though the consideration factor is missing out, it should be treated as deemed supply. Next. Second transaction, supplies between related persons or distinct persons also amounts to deemed supply, that we have already seen. And you can see the example of definition of the related person, and the diagram explains you clearly. And then distinct persons, just now we have seen that distinct persons, and any stock transfers happening between distinct persons. Example చెప్పుకున్నాం మనం, branch 1 branch 2 there is a stock transfer. Now whether this stock transfer amounts to supply liable to GST, answer is yes. Though the consideration factor is missing out, still amounts to transfer. Next. Is it stock transfer constitutes supply? Answer is absolutely yes. It is constitutes to supply even though the consideration factor is missing out. It is liable to GST. Is the supply of goods or services or both between the employer and employee constitutes supplier? Supply? Answer is no, sir. Basically, whatever the services provided by the employee to the employer in the course of employment not amounts to supply, not liable to GST. But when it comes to the gifts, if it is less than or equal to 50,000, exempted, not a supply. Exceeding 50,000 amounts to supply. Next, third transaction, supply between principal and agent. Supplies between principal and agent. So whenever the principal supplying the goods to agent, of course no consideration is involving, because the agent have to sell the goods to third party. He need to take the consideration and the same will be paid to principal. And initially at the time of sending of the goods by the principal to agent, no consideration is involving, hence not amounts to, no consideration is involving. Though the no consideration is involving, this will be deemed as supply and liable to GST. Deemed as supply and liable to GST. Next. Importation of services without consideration. As I said just now, if consideration factor is missing out, it should be made in the course or in furtherance of business. When it comes to the importation of services, either consideration factor should be there or it should be in the course or in furtherance of business. Among these two, at least one should be in existence. Among these two. Are you following now? When consideration factor is missing out, it should be made in the course or in furtherance of business. Then only it is to be treated as supply. And even though the consideration factor is missing out, if we are importing the services in the course or in furtherance of business, it is deemed to be supply and liable to GST. Next. So you can see here, if consideration is involving, whether it is in the course of business or not, it is taxable. When consideration is not involving, it should be made in the course or in furtherance of business. Then only it is taxable. Other cases, not taxable. Clear? Next. This odd gallery, this we have already seen, not a supply. Next, activities to be treated as supply of goods or as supply of services. Schedule 2. Classification. Earlier, there is a lot of ambiguity involved under the existing taxation system, whether to treat this particular transaction as goods or services. And a best example I can tell you, restaurant transactions. In restaurant transactions, both goods and services involved. Both goods and services involved. Right, ma? When both goods and services are involved, what should be levy? If goods involving, so VAT levy, services involving, service taxes levy. Goods మీద VAT levy చేయాలి, services మీద service tax levy చేయాలి. Right? Earlier, restaurant transactions are supposed to tax under VAT system and as well as service tax system. The restaurant person used to levy VAT at the rate of 14.5% and used to levy service tax at the rate of 15%. But of course, they segregated the bill value on it. 40% of the portion should be treated as goods portion, 60% of the portion should be treated as services portion. Accordingly, they are levied on it. And there were so many transactions which involves both goods and services, which creates a lot of unnecessary ambiguity, not clarity. And ఇప్పుడు ఇక్కడ నేను VAT లెవీ చేయాలా సర్వీస్ ట్యాక్స్ లెవీ చేయాలని ఒక కన్ఫ్యూజన్ లో ఆ పర్సన్ ని పడేసేవి. But GST law, no more confusions. All such a kind of transactions have now been classified either supply of goods or supply of services or supply of services. Right? And that is what explained in schedule number 2. Schedule 2 lo adi manaki explain chesaru. Look at the transactions. First one, transfer. Transfer of title of goods. Title, ownership. Now, whenever the ownership in the goods transferring, it amounts to supply of goods. When ownership not transferring, only the right to use the goods is transferring. Ownership is not transferring. Example, lease. Lease transactions. Lease transactions law, ownership is not transferred. Only the right to use transferred. Supply of services. Sir, ownership is getting transferred, sir, but not immediately, at a future date. At a future date, the ownership transferring, even though it is to be treated as supply of goods. Best example, hire purchase contracts. Best example, hire purchase contracts. Are you following now? Under the hire purchase agreements, the ownership will be transferred to the hire purchaser only on the payment of the last installment. So does it amount to supply of goods or supply of services? Supply of goods only, because ownership is getting transferred now. So not immediately transferring enough, even though if there is a provision existing regarding the transfer of ownership, that amounts to supply of goods, irrespective of the fact whether ownership transferring immediately or ownership transferring at a future date, it amounts to supply of goods. Next, second one, land and buildings. Lease transactions, tenancy, supply of services. Why? Because ownership is not transferring now. Next, treatment of process and a job work. Job work, again ownership not gets transferred. Supply of services. Transfer of business assets, ownership is transferring. Supply of goods. Supply of goods. Now here you can see, here in this case the ownership is not getting transferred. And you purchased a product, you purchased a good, and later on you started using it for your personal purposes, then it is amounts to supply of services. Supply of services. Next, here the ownership is getting transferred, supply of goods. Renting of immovable property. Renting transactions, ownership transferring, no sir, supply of services. Next, construction complex, building or civil structure. Construction services. Construction services amounts to supply of services only. Amounts to supply of services. But the very important here is that this one. This is a very important point. Except where the entire consideration has been received after the issuance of completion certificate where required by the competent authority or its first occupation, whichever is earlier. I'll tell you an example, ma'am. Sir, there is an apartment under construction. Under construction. I've gone there and I've seen one 2 BHK flat It is still under construction, not in a ready to occupy position. It is still under construction. It will take another 1 year to complete. I've just gone there and look at that 2 BHK and I purchased it. I paid certain advance. I have paid certain advance. I booked that flat. Now this transaction amounts to supply of services. Right? What I'm going to receive there is services, construction services. That builder construct our 2 BHK flat and handed over to it, handed over to us. So I am availing the construction services from builder. Now, second example. So there is a construction of apartment which is already completed. It's a new apartment which has already been given with completion certificate and it is ready to occupy stage. It is in ready to occupy stage. I've gone there, seen one 2 BHK flat and I purchased it. Now this is amounts to supply of goods. Of course, we should not treat neither supply of goods nor supply of services. It's purely purchasing of an immovable property. And immovable properties are outside the definition of goods. So not liable to GST. So under construction lo undagane meer flat book cheste, it amounts to supply of services liable to GST. Already constructed flat ni meer konte, it is neither supply of services nor supply of goods, not liable to GST. Are you following, ma? That is the point explained here. Clear? Next. Temporary transfer or permitting are the use of intellectual property rights. Temporary transfer and vade cheptunnadu, ownership is not transferring, supply of services. Point number D is a software services, supply of services. Point number E, right, tolerating the act of others, supply of services. Point number F, transfer of right to use of the goods, supply of services. Point number 6, composite supplies, works, contract, services, supply of services. Point number 7, supply of goods by an unincorporated association, a body of persons to a member. Supply of goods and what is required. So amounts to supply of goods. Next. Retrading of tires. This is actually a new concept. Retrading of tires అనేది. Retrading అంటే సార్ old tires మీదనే మనకి additional layers చేసి grips draw చేసి ఇస్తారు మనకి. Instead of buying a new tire, we can purchase a retrading tire. మనం ఈవెన్ అమెజాన్ ఫ్లిప్కార్ట్స్ లో కూడా రీఫాబ్రికేటెడ్ మొబైల్స్ అని చెప్పి మనం చూస్తున్నాం. రీఫాబ్రికేటెడ్ మొబైల్స్, సేమ్ కాన్సెప్ట్, retrading of tires. Retrading of tires. Right, ma. Old tires ఏవైతే మనకి బాగా అరిగిపోయి ఉంటాయో యూసేజ్ లో, వాటి మీద అడిషనల్ లేయర్స్ ఆఫ్ అది కోటింగ్, అడిషనల్ కోటింగ్ వేసి వాటి మీద మనకి ఆ గ్రిప్స్ అనేవి డ్రా చేసి ఇస్తారు. అంటే ద రీట్రేడింగ్ టైర్ విల్ ఫంక్షన్ యాజ్ ఎ న్యూ టైర్, విల్ బి ఫంక్షన్ జస్ట్ లైక్ యాజ్ ఎ న్యూ టైర్. అర్థమవుతుందా? నౌ దిస్ retrading of tires amounts to supply of goods when you are selling directly. అలా కాకుండా మీకు ఒక పర్సన్ ఓల్డ్ టైర్స్ తీసుకొచ్చి ఇచ్చి వాటిని రీట్రేడింగ్ చేసి ఇమ్మన్నారు. దట్ అమౌంట్స్ టు సప్లై ఆఫ్ సర్వీసెస్. నెక్స్ట్ ఆఫ్టర్ దట్ యూ హ్యావ్ ది కాన్సెప్ట్ ఆఫ్ నెగటివ్ లిస్ట్. అంటే నైదర్ సప్లై ఆఫ్ గూడ్స్ నార్ సప్లై ఆఫ్ సర్వీసెస్. అంటే దట్ మీన్స్ నాట్ లయబుల్ టు జిఎస్టీ. దట్ మీన్స్ నాట్ లయబుల్ టు జిఎస్టీ. Schedule 3 contains the same only. So what are covering here? You can see, ma. First one, services between employer and employee. Services by an employee to an employer, not liable to GST. Next, second one, services provided by the courts, tribunals, not liable to GST. Third one, services provided by the MPs, MLAs, members of panchayat. Right, government main postings ఉంటాయి కదమ్మా. MLAs, MPs, President of India, Vice President of India, Prime Minister, Chief Justice, Lok Sabha Speaker, Chief Election Commissioner will provide choices services exempted from GST. Service number 4, the services which we are going to receive after our death. After our death, మనం పోయాక రిసీవ్ చేసుకునే సర్వీసెస్ అన్ని కూడా exempted from GST అండి. Services of funeral, burial, crematorium, mortuary, including the transportation of deceased. All these services exempted from GST. Next, sale of land because it is an immovable property. Sale of building, right? Sale of building kuda eppudu manaki exemption amma if we paid the entire consideration after the completion of construction, then it is exempted from GST. If it is under construction, liable to GST. Next, actionable claims other than lottery, betting and gambling exempted from GST. Next, finally, composite and mixed supplies. Composite and mixed supplies. Last theory topic, amma. Okay, we are in the last 5 minutes of the topic. Okay, now time for the doubt session, sir. We will discuss this composite and mixed supply after the break. We'll have a break. After the break, we'll start directly with composite and mixed supplies. Now, time for the doubts. Anyone, any doubts from these first two chapters? Ask me, sir. Those who are having the doubts, stay in the meeting. You can ask. Those who are not having any doubts, you can leave the meeting and enjoy the break. Anyone, any doubts?